Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the GRUMPS-MMSD Board of Education School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Arlene Silvera, and I'm going to be your moderator for this big event. For those of you not familiar with GRUMPS, it stands for Grandparents United for Madison's Public Schools. We have a show of hands. How many in the audience are GRUMPS? Good turnout, good turnout. And we do have some GRUMPS here who are involved in the planning and implementation of the forum. Over at the table against the wall is Nan Bryan. In the middle is Barbara Arnold. And then our two timers, we have Carol Karstensen and Ann Arneson. So if you are interested in joining GRUMPS or more information about GRUMPS and how you can help advocate for public education, there is a table and sign-up sheets over against the wall where Nan is sitting. Before we get going, a couple of things I'd like to bring up. So on the ballot in April, you're going to be asked to vote for 2 school board members, a candidate for seat 1 and a candidate for seat 2. I'll introduce the candidates in a moment, but first I just want to clarify that Anna and Gloria, if you can both raise your hands, they're running for seat 1. Anna is the incumbent, Gloria is her challenger, and Mary is running unopposed for seat 2. So you'll be asked again in April to vote for 1 person for seat 1 and 1 person for seat 2. We did ask the candidates to provide a 1-sentence description of themselves, and I'll start with Mary. Mary Burke is served and founder of Building Brave, a nonprofit with a mission of connecting, inspiring, and empowering women. Gloria Reyes is the Madison Deputy Mayor for Public Safety and Education, considers herself a voice for all teachers, students, and community. And Anna Moffett, a former educator, currently serves as Vice President of the Madison Metropolitan Board of Education, works as a parent-peer specialist for Wisconsin Family Ties, and has 3 children enrolled in our public schools. Fast-moving. Each candidate will have an opening and a closing statement. Some questions will be asked of all of the candidates, and some questions will be asked of specific candidates. In this case, the other 2 candidates will have 1 minute to respond. And there will also be questions that we have collected from the audience. We want to get through a lot of questions this evening, so we ask the candidates to adhere to the timeline. Carol and Ann will be timing. So Ann has 3 color cards. When she holds up the green card, you'll have 30 seconds left. The yellow card, 10 seconds left. And the red card, stop. And we ask you just to wrap up your sentence when she holds up the red card. We also ask that the audience hold their applause and their comments until the end. We know that these are important forums, and we have a number of questions, as I mentioned, that we would really like to be able to get through. The candidates drew names to determine who would be first for the opening, first question, and closing. And Mary picked number 1, so she's going to be first for the opening statement. So before we start that, do the candidates have any questions, clarifications? You push on the bottom and you hold it in until the light goes on. So with that, the opening statement for each candidate is 2 minutes, and Mary Burke will start.
Thank you very much, Arlene, for the introduction. Thank you to the GRUMPS for putting this on, and for all of you for coming tonight. And I am running for a 3rd term for the Madison School Board for probably the same reasons as most of you are here tonight, is I just care deeply about public education in Madison. The 6 years that I've served on the board has been devoted to making sure that all students have the opportunities and the support and the inspiration to realize their potential. And we've made tremendous progress in the last 6 years. We have seen in elementary schools, African American students double the percentage that read at proficient. We have seen increases in our graduation rates. We have seen Latino students enrolling in post-secondary education in much greater numbers than we have seen in the past. But I'm also running because we have a lot of work to do. The status quo and where we at isn't acceptable. Change in education takes time. There's no silver bullets. There's no easy answers. It's about supporting teachers in our classrooms every single day. It's about making policies that make sense. It's about managing our resources so we can sustain our efforts over the long term. And I feel I bring the type of experience to the board that is needed, whether it's education experience, nonprofit experience, government experience, or even bringing financial and business skills to it. So I look forward to serving a third term, to continuing the work that we're doing, but increasing the pace of change so that every student who graduates from Madison schools is career and community ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria Reyes. I am running for school board because I believe strongly that public education is the foundation of our city's success. I am a daughter of immigrants. I am a daughter of migrant farm workers who worked really hard to ensure that I had a better life. I am a product of our public schools. I attended public schools throughout, and I have children in our public schools. I know that you all want kids to succeed. And I bring that leadership into the school board to make that happen. I understand the challenges that our children are faced with today. I've lived in poverty. I was actually on the trajectory from the school to prison pipeline. I had a lot of behavior issues, but because I had good teachers and I had good staff who motivated me, who touched my life in a way that changed my trajectory. I believe in our public schools, and that is why I'm running for Madison School Board. I have been able to transcend those experiences into my experience working as a law enforcement officer for 12 years, serving this city, and in that capacity, in protecting and serving our residents to ensure their safety all across the city. In my current role as deputy mayor to public safety and education, I strongly see that connection. I strongly see the connection to having education and ensuring that we are preparing our students for the workforce. And so thank you for being here today. Thank you for the opportunity and for talking about the issues.
I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I believe everybody in this room sees public education as a top priority, so I appreciate you being here and supporting our work. My name is Anna Moffett, and as Arlene said, I currently serve as the Vice President of the Madison School Board. I also serve as a legislative liaison, and I also serve on the Educational Resource Officer Ad Hoc Committee. I've chosen to run for the Board of Education because education has truly been my life's work, because I do believe it's the great equalizer in our society, and I think it's critical for a socially just society. I grew up in Madison as well and graduated from West High School. I went on to UW-Madison and graduated with an elementary education degree. I taught for 2 years down in Texas, moved back, and taught for another 5 years in the DeForest Area School District. Unfortunately, Madison didn't hire me. I then started a family with my husband. We had 3 kids, and early on, my youngest son had some pretty significant needs, so I did have to leave the profession. After several years of making sure he was adequately supported and was engaged in our public schools, I was then able to get back into the workforce, and I used my experience of having a son that had a disability as well as mental health needs to work towards becoming a parent peer specialist with an organization called Wisconsin Family Ties. It was through that work and through the systemic marginalization that I saw for some of our students that I chose to run for the Board of Education. I have worked on many policies to make our schools a more fair place. I've also passed several amendments to close the opportunity gaps that exist for students in our district. And I believe education is the key to success in life. I've dedicated my life to it, and I would want to serve another term, and I look to have your support.
We'll go to question number 1, and this question is for all of the candidates. And when we drew, Anna is going to answer this one first. We're going to start off kind of easy. Ease our way in. What one thing did you accomplish as a board member or deputy mayor that brings you the most pride? And if you had one do-over, what vote or action would you change and why? So we'll go with Anna.
I would say I am most proud of the work that myself and others on the Board of Education have done in this past year in regard to really taking a closer look at the use of educational resource officers in our high schools. This continues to be a topic that is front and center in our community as well as in our schools. And the way we had been doing things in the past 20 years, which was settling contracts behind closed doors, I felt was unacceptable. And so my fellow board members, in partnership with the city, the police department, and administration, put forward a different plan, a different way to do things, which opened the conversation to the public and allowed a more transparent conversation. And I want to acknowledge that Freedom Inc. is here, and they've been part of the conversation since the beginning. So we appreciate your input, as well as Families for Justice have been part of that conversation. So I'm very proud of that work, and I look forward to putting forth the recommendations in May. One thing that I would do over on the Board of Education, gosh, I'm kind of a person who I feel like I make mistakes, but I think that they're an opportunity for growth. And so all the decisions I've made, I feel, have led to learning in my experience. I think one thing initially that I did early on is I probably crossed the line of a parent and a board member and an advocate in some issues. But I think that's difficult when we wear so many different hats.
So one of my accomplishments is the overseeing the Madison Police Department review. If you recall, a few years back, we had a significant amount of shootings in our country involving officer-involved shootings. And one of them, Tony Robinson, was impacted by that. Our community it was saddened. It was a difficult moment for our community. The Madison Police Department Review Committee started in result of that, and it was a push by the community. That was a huge accomplishment. I'll tell you why. Because we allowed for a transparent process in that we incorporated a diverse group of people to serve on the committee who had never served on a committee before. I was being pressured over and over again. We need to hurry up. We need to do this quick. But I said, no, if we're going to do this right, we need to have the people at the table who are most impacted. So we took our time. We allowed people who were not part of a city committee ever before, and we trained them and we prepared them to move through this process. And in a result, it is a very transparent process. And the result is we're getting the feedback and the comments to change the way we police our communities of color and who are most impacted by law enforcement through policies, through procedures. That is something I'm very proud of. When I leave the mayor's office, that is something that I can say that we did that right. Now, something that I look back and think that we could have done different is the language access plan for the city. We should have done this a long time ago. Accessibility for city government is so important. Accessibility for our schools and what's happening when we are implementing policies. Accessibility. We need to provide language access plan. So my only thing about that is that we did not talk to our staff. It was good. There were some things that we could have changed.
Mary?
The most impactful decision that I have been a part of since serving on the board has been in hiring our superintendent. There is nothing that is more important for our school board than to hire and oversee the superintendent. They are truly the day-to-day leader of our district and is responsible for the outcomes. And when I joined the board there was a tremendous amount of dysfunction on the board and between the board and the superintendent. That really takes away from the focus, the work, the energy that is really needed to move our district forward to better serve our students and our staff. And so the hiring of Jen Cheatham was something that I am very proud of. It's something that I think the board reached a consensus on. It was a very clear choice. And I have been part of a board too that while being an independent voice, or let's say 7 independent voices, which is important, we also work in a very collaborative way with our superintendent. And so I would say that has been the most impactful role that I have played, or decision I've made on the board. In terms of what I would have done differently, when we approved and the administration implemented the behavior education plan, I do not believe that the time and the resources and the forethought was put into it. I think we rushed it in, and as a result, I don't think our staff had the support and the training that they really needed to make the policy work as well as it was designed to work.
Gloria, we'll start the next question, and this question is for all 3 candidates as well. A family with 3 young children is moving to Madison for job reasons. While looking at homes in Madison, the realtor suggests that they consider Middleton for their schools. The family looks up the Madison School Board and calls you for advice. You have 2 minutes to sell MMSD. What would you say?
If elected, I would say that we have a very diverse board, and we reflect the communities that we serve and our students. I would say that we have options and opportunities for our youth, that they are able, if they want to learn Spanish, that we have those opportunities in our schools. If they want to look into pathways in our schools and other opportunities, we have that. We have a strong AVID program within Madison schools to prepare our students for college. I would say that being connected, it's part of a community. You are not only enrolling your children in our public schools, but you're enrolling your children into a community that offers support, a community that comes into our schools day in and day out. And also, once elected to the school board, you will be part of a healthy and safe environment, that we take bullying seriously, that we take harassment, sexual assault seriously, that we have a healthy environment for our students when it comes to food policies. We have advanced learning opportunities, that you can enroll your kids to advanced classes. That is what I'm talking about. When you enroll your kids into the Madison Public Schools, you are looking at somebody who came from a very difficult, challenging upbringing with poverty and all the challenges that came with that, who succeeded in our public schools. I am an example of what we do well in this community, and that's what I would tell them.
Thank you.
Gloria, you did an amazing job. I'm sold. So I would emphasize the opportunities that are available. And whether it is in our elementary schools, our middle schools, our high schools, students in the Madison School District have an array of opportunities that students in Middleton do not have. And those opportunities are created not only by the resources and the curriculum and the classes that we have available, but by the interactions that they have every single day with our diverse staff and with the diverse student body that we have. The supports that for our students are tailored to each student's needs. And no one does a better job of meeting special needs of students than the Madison School District. We are on the edge of looking out always on how we can get better. And while we have issues, those are ones which we have the plans for. And whether it's advanced learner, whether it's dual language immersion, whether it is the AVID program, our Pathways program, we have a future for students in which we are looking to meet their needs.
Well, I think I would begin the conversation by inviting them to come to my children's school so they can see for themselves all the wonderful things that take place in our schools every day. I think unfortunately I do have people who actually call me in my work and they hear a lot of negative stuff. But actually if you're in our schools, like I am on a daily basis, you see some pretty miraculous things. So what would I sell folks on? Well, I first of all would lead with diversity. I mean, our school district is tremendously diverse. We have students from all different places. We have over 90 different languages spoken in our schools. We still continue to have one of the better programs, more inclusive programs for our students with disabilities. So we have kids learning alongside other kids that may have very different experiences from them. And I think that's really powerful because moving forward, we are going to continue to have a more global society and our students need to be prepared to interact with folks that may be different than them and have a different experience. I also agree with Mary. We have tremendous opportunities. At a board meeting, we recognized students who were actually working with researchers in fields of science and technology that I don't even know what they were talking about. But it didn't matter because that is exceptional that we have high school students that are working with some of the most well-renowned researchers across the country. So I think that's a tremendous asset. And last, I would say, my goodness, as a parent-peer specialist, I work across Dane County in schools, and I just have to say that our staff in the Madison School District are exceptional. We have such highly qualified, passionate, dedicated staff members giving up so much of their time and their energy, and I just think they're the best, and our students too.
We have a follow-up question on this topic for each of you, and you will get 1 minute to answer. And since Anna has the mic, does the district provide information about our schools to realtors?
We do provide information with realtors, and actually I believe Superintendent Cheatham has done a very nice job working more closely with the Realtors Association. I have actually met a few realtors and invited them to come visit our schools so that they also can see firsthand the great things that are taking place in our schools. But I was also invited to attend one of their meetings, so I think it's a place where we can do more, particularly Board of Education members and parents.
How can the district gather information from realtors about buyers' perceptions of the Madison School District?
I would refer them to our city website, and I would also refer them to the Madison School District website. I would introduce them to our planning department so that they can talk to our planning department. We're talking about realtors, correctly? Correct, yeah. And to speak with our planning department to figure out how our city is going to grow. I think that they should know that, all right? When people are coming to the city to buy, they want to see the prospects. They want to see the growth in their community and where they're thinking about buying. So I would refer them to our community development division as well. Talk about our community services, our organizations that we fund. So planning, community development. I refer them to our Madison School District website and then also the city's website.
Thank you. Change perceptions about MMSD.
I think that our communications has gotten a lot better, but I think we have a lot further to go. And whether it's the realtors or whether it's outreach to parents in neighborhoods who all of a sudden have students who are school age and maybe are thinking that their neighborhood school is not the right one and are considering moving, we have to be extremely proactive about selling the attributes that we have in our schools. Because the environment that we are facing in terms of other choices, whether it's other school districts, whether it's private schools, now whether it's charter schools, we have to make sure that we are selling Madison and all of the attributes. So I think that starts with each and every school and every principal knowing that they have the opportunities to be bringing neighborhood and parents and realtors in to understand exactly the attributes that every school offers.
Okay, this next question will be for Mary. You'll have 2 minutes to answer, and then Gloria and Anna will each have 1 minute to respond to the question as a follow-up. So in recent years, MMSD has expanded dual language immersion, or our DLI program. Many students have benefited. However, there have been some unintended consequences, including increased segregation within DLI classrooms, which overwhelmingly serve white and Latino students. Black, students with disabilities, and highly mobile students are clustered in English language classrooms in these schools. In addition, it's difficult to hire certified teachers. Next year, the school board will work to revise the district's English language learners plan. What are your recommendations or thoughts for addressing these issues?
It's a great question, and it's one of the most important questions that is facing our district. And we have a program with dual language immersion that's a highly successful program. What we need to do is build on it, and we need to fix the issues that the unintended consequences, as you've called them, Arlene. There's no reason that these issues can't be fixed. So first and foremost, I would make sure that we do better outreach to those students and the parents who aren't being included in these programs. And so that could be African American parents who are not aware of the benefits of DLI. So that's one, is the outreach. The second is making sure that the classes that are not DLI classes within those schools are staffed appropriately and have the student support that they need. So we can run programs. We shouldn't have any issues with having a school that has both the dual language immersion program and our regular classrooms, and not having them both be extremely high learning environments for our students. And we should make sure that students in our DLA strands are able to do that elementary, middle, high school, in each one of the feeder high school districts in our district. So I would say we shouldn't abandon anything around DLI. We should just make sure that we are providing the opportunities, the staffing, and the support for the classrooms and the students who are not in those programs, but to also make sure that those students and families are aware of the opportunities and why they belong in DLI.
Thank you. Gloria and Anna, you each have 1 minute.
Sure, I agree with everything that Mary just said. I think that when we look at what we value as a community, when we look at businesses and what they value, they're looking for people who can speak a different language, particularly Spanish. So we need to prepare our kids for that. We need to prepare our kids for the workforce. So I agree, we have to continue to support DLI. I have black and brown children, and I want them to be able to go into these programs. My black children, I want them to be a part of DLI. There is no reason why they should not be able to be a part of this program, and we should be able to reach out to them, reach out to those parents. I have those connections within our African American community. I can increase the rate of black children going into our DLI programs. There is no reason why we can't do that. We have to stop looking at our black children and our brown children from a deficit level. We have to figure out how we get them there. Those are opportunities that are only going to benefit them and prepare them for their future.
Thank you. Anna?
Sure. I agree that DLI has been a wonderful program that is really special in our district and not found in many other places. I also share the concerns, though, that were in the question provided above, but I do think there are solutions. I believe we do need to improve outreach and to really be talking to different communities that are not currently enrolling in our DLI programming, and actually having a conversation and really listening to our families and students about why they're choosing not to enroll, so that we can address that. I also think we need to be listening to our bilingual educators who have brought forth very valid ideas about how to have a more proportionate DLI program. And my husband is a bilingual resource teacher, and he worked at Midvale, and we had those discussions, and I think we need to listen to our educators. And I also think I've been very supportive about making sure that we provide additional funding, recruiting for our bilingual educators.
Thank you. Will be for Gloria. And Gloria, you will have 2 minutes, and then Mary and Anna will each have 1 minute to respond. So the board recently decided to delay the start time of middle schoolers until 8:40 a.m. The decision was based on adolescent brain research. Equally, if not more important, are facts related to early childhood brain development. The first 8 years are critical to optimal child development. Given this research, birth to 4 may be the most important time of a child's life. What steps would you take to ensure that MMSD works in collaboration with early childhood providers to best serve children birth to 4?
Great, thank you. So I serve on a Northside Early Childhood Zone leadership staff team. It is focusing on the north side and focusing on the birth to 4, preparing those, supporting the parents, the mother, and the children before going into school. It is funded by the Rennebaum Foundation. This is a public-private partnership. It is so important. It is changing the way we are looking at early childhood. And the Rennebaum Foundation is just stepped up and has taken this a priority. We have the county involved. We have the city involved. We have MMSD involved. We have United Way involved. Those are the kind of partnerships that we need to have out in our community to prepare our children for school. And so I will continue those partnerships once elected to the school board. I think that is so important. I think our schools can't do this alone, and we need to prepare and work for, look at our preschools and preparing them and ensuring that our children are prepared for school at that time.
Thank you. Mary, 1 minute.
I agree with Gloria about the importance of partnerships when we're looking at birth to 4. In addition to that, though, would be making sure that our own MMSD 4K program is meeting the needs of parents and of students. And while we have progressed in expanding and offering this program, we also know that there are a lot of parents who are not accessing it because a half-day program is not feasible for them at all. They can't take off from work in the middle of the day and come and pick up their child and then find other daycare for them. So I'm fully supportive of undertaking a pilot program to make 4K full day and seeing how that impacts the enrollments and our students' learning and families as a first step to a full rollout to the district.
Thank you. And Anna, 1 minute.
As an educator, I fully believe that access to early education needs to be a priority for our district. This is work that I've been working on for a couple of years now, just kind of laying the groundwork, reaching out to folks that could be community partners, also looking at what other government organizations could help the district get us to the place where we could offer all-day 4K in targeted neighborhoods. I am fully supportive of that. I'm excited that it came up in our discussion last night as a priority area. So I look forward to seeing that move forward. I would also say too, I believe there's a lot to investing in parent liaisons in our school buildings and really continuing to expand our community school models. There's a lot that we can be doing with our parents that doesn't require a team of experts. It just is sitting down with folks and talking with them and helping them better understand how they can prepare their child for school.
Now it's time for an audience question. And I think Mary's turn to start the question, the responses, because this is for all of you. It's a double-sided question, so here we go. Rumor has it that high schools will soon be wall-to-wall pathways, all using block scheduling. Doesn't it make sense to encourage, in quotes, uniqueness in our schools based upon a parent, student, staff, and community vision? How will you encourage diversity among our high schools?
Well, the wall-to-wall pathways is a rumor. That is, we have certainly undertaken pathways. We have been quite successful in our first year, but it's very early. Right now there is one pathway. It's around the health field, and we have had a lot of very positive, engaged students and feedback from parents. That's positive. We always want to build on things that are working, but I think our board is quite unanimous in saying we're taking a wait and see, we're going to be evaluating it, and we will make those decisions based on what we see not only with the students and the parents who are in the program, but also what we're hearing from parents and students who are not in the program. So I applaud the administration for undertaking this, for the board for supporting it, but we are going to proceed at a rate that looks at exactly how we can make sure that students are viewed as individuals and that their potential and their interests are what drives our curriculum and our offerings. Gloria?
So I don't support the wall-to-wall pathways. As I said earlier, it is about options for students and ensuring that they have options. And then I just want to move into the increasing diversity question. Part of that question is that I think diversity is important across the board. We have to ensure that we have diversity in our leadership positions, that we have diversity on boards. We need to reflect our student body within within the school district, and that starts with the board. We have to have a diverse board, a board that can speak on the different values and issues of our students, and that is across the board. We have to increase diversity, and we do that by growing your own programs, right? Though that is a great program that came from the school administration. Grow your own. We have to be able to look at our students and be able to prepare them, right? If they want to go into the field of education, let's make that happen for them. I did that within law enforcement. I was one of, we are we have a lot of women in our police department right now. We do really well. But officers of color, we needed to improve. And so while we were going to Green Bay for recruitment or other small colleges, recruiting white males, I stood up for that and I said, no, we have students here who are interested in law enforcement, who are going to our technical colleges. Let's promote them and let's get them into the field of law enforcement. So I truly believe in grow your own. I believe that we should enforce and support our other staff to go into the field of teaching who are already currently within the MMSD. But I think with the focus of, if we're talking about racial equity and social justice, we can't do that without diverse representation. We need to have people who look like them who are making the decisions.
Thank you. Hannah?
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with Mary that is a rumor, and so I know I've been hearing it a lot myself while I've been talking with folks in the community. Right now, we've just started the first pathway, and I think the entire board is looking to see how it goes. There's been some promising feedback coming back from families that are enrolled in it. I personally really value the small learning communities. I think, any way we can develop stronger relationships between students and their educators is going to be powerful for outcomes. I also value the hands-on learning and the experiential learning, as well as the potential for internships, apprenticeships in the community later on. I think those are all things that I value. I do have some concerns in regard to the pathway around having students commit to a pathway when they're really developmentally not maybe prepared to make that decision. I have concerns about what happens if a kid maybe makes a bad decision, wants to get out of a pathway. Where do they go? Can they get into the other pathway or can't they? Right now, we don't know, so we have to figure that out. And I also have concerns that I really believe that all children need to have a well-rounded education. And I wouldn't want pathways to eliminate other opportunities to access the arts, theater, music, foreign language. I think all of those are critical. And so I just wouldn't want pathways to limit those opportunities for our students. But I'm looking forward to what we hear in the next year on the feedback and if we're seeing results, and then we'll move from there. I feel like our board has done a really great job asking tough questions and staying on top of the situation, and so we'll see where things go.
Okay, the next question is for Mary. 2 minutes, and then Gloria and Anna will each have a minute to respond. You knew it was coming. We have a BEP question. Recent events in our high schools have brought added scrutiny to the Behavior Education Plan, or the BEP. But we have heard complaints about the BEP since it was implemented 3 years ago. Why did it take so long for the board to respond?
It's a great question, and I addressed in one of the questions about what I would have done differently as a board, and it certainly was around the preparation and the support for the BEP. It was adopted fairly late. We thought it was very important to make the changes so that our response to behavioral issues was more educational than just relying on discipline. And in that efforts to make sure that the changes were taking place as quickly as possible, because we had students being expelled and suspended for reasons that really didn't warrant it. And we know that when students are out of the classroom and out of the school, they're not learning. And in that rush to make sure that we were creating an equitable environment, though, we did not take the time and put the resources into making sure that our staff was adequately trained and that we had the backup and the supports to be able to respond to the new ways of responding to behavioral issues. And so no apologies, other than we should have either delayed the start of it in order to have better supports, or we should have looked at how we could strengthen those supports right from the start. Other than that, I think the board has been watching very closely how the behavior education plan is doing. We have updates on a regular basis and are looking not only at the data but at the anecdotal information. We are preparing to make changes to it, and we will continue to. And no policy, there's very few policies that are implemented that right from the start hit it right out of the park. And we know that we have work to do on the BEP, and for me as a board member, safety in our schools and in our classrooms is the top priority.
Thank you. Gloria, you have 1 minute.
So safety in our schools is my top priority, and that is the experience that I bring onto the school board. The reason why it took so long is because we don't have our pulse onto the community. Not only the community, but then also our teachers and our staff who are doing this work day in and day out. We should have caught this sooner. Anytime that we implement a program within the city, we assess it consistently throughout that process. It is called performance excellence. We take it through a process. We get the voice of the customer, and those are those who are most impacted by the process, the change. We have to develop change management teams to be able to prepare our students and our teachers for anything new, right? And we have to consistently get their input. So it shouldn't have taken that long, but we have to have the pulse within our school district. We have to be talking out there. As policymakers, we cannot get disconnected from the issues. We have to be out there day in and day out.
Thank you. Anna.
Yes, I just want to clarify for folks here that I was not on the board to vote for the passage of the BEP. But I completely agree with you, Mary. As a citizen watching how it unfolded, and as an educator and an advocate for children and youth with mental health needs, I had my concerns. And I would say I have brought those concerns up every year. In fact, sometimes I get picked on a little bit because I talk about it maybe too much. But I think it's important. I truly believe that punishing kids is not the answer. If it worked, we wouldn't have a problem because we've been doing it for decades. And so we have to start better supporting our students. And I think there's research that shows us what we need to do. We have educators that can guide us. We have families asking for it. So I am going to continue to focus on behavioral and mental health because I think it is critical to see our kids be successful.
Follow-up questions I will ask all of you to answer in 1 minute. Will you ask for the board to undertake a comprehensive review of the BEP as it applies to all grade levels, and will you include staff, students, and EROs? Anna, why don't you start?
So I would just start out by saying that we do a quarterly review around behavioral referrals and tracking that type of stuff. We just had a meeting to discuss it, which Mary alluded to, where we're already discussing where we might make minor changes. So as a board, this is a high priority for us, so that's why we continue to come back to it every few months to discuss. And I think we do, unfortunately in the last go around, we got rid of some of the data that I felt was really critical, and that was input from our staff and climate survey data. So I will be advocating to get that back because I think that's important, as well as we need more information from our students.
Gloria?
So yeah, I would really like to see a comprehensive review, including staff, students, and EROs. But I think the missing part here is how this is impacting our African American students. This is race-based, right? We have to ensure that whatever we do, that we bring in our African American community and our Latino community into this discussion. They cannot be ignored. They cannot be ignored. They need to understand what's happening in our schools, and they need to be a part of the solution. They have not been part of this discussion, and they are most impacted by the issues and behaviors in our schools. We have to call that out, and they will bring so much to the solution and the problem solving. And unfortunately, I don't think that they have been part of this discussion, what's happening in our schools. I will bring that. I have those community connections, and I think it's important. I do that within city government all the time. Anytime we're assessing something, we have to include those who are most impacted. We have to take it through a racial equity analysis. I do that within the city all the time. This is something that I would bring onto the board.
I would favor that we continue to bring parties together, and as Gloria says, I don't think we have had all the voices at the table. Just this week, I met with the Student Senate, and it was getting student input on exactly what their experience and their ideas with regards to behavior in our high schools. So we have to make sure that we are engaging our staff, our students, our communities, particularly our communities of color, but understand that this is a process that we have to continually refine and improve and make sure that the supports. And I visited a lot of schools this year, and what I heard from staff is not so much the problems with the policy itself, but with the types of interventions that are needed and the support for mental health for our students. And so we have to look at the underlying causes and not just blame the policy, because there are other issues with regards to our students that need to be addressed.
Another follow-up question. And some of you have partly answered this, but are there specific areas of the current BEP that you want to see changed or improved? Specifics.
We have, the BEP is a big plan, and it covers so many different types of behaviors, and I think that it is confusing. What the administration is recommending is certainly specific changes around specific types of behaviors. And these are ones that they have heard from our staff and from our schools that need to be addressed. So I would listen to the staff to figure out and to be informed on which changes specifically to the policy. But I will go back to the point that I made at the end of the last question. I really want to get at the underlying issues of behavior and what we can do with the root causes to better support our students. Because the behaviors are the tip of the iceberg, and below we have a lot of trauma that so many of our students have experienced, and we have to better support them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that when we talk about trauma, I mean, I don't know if anybody watched the 60-minute video with Oprah on trauma and how that's impacting, right? How that has impacted Milwaukee. And I see that. We have to really deal with the underlying issues that our students are faced with and support those efforts. But I think that what I would want to do is, oftentimes I hear, I mean, I heard it from my own son who went to East High School, is that it was really hard for him to focus because of the behavior in the classrooms where the teachers could not teach. And there was a disruption. So we have to deal with that. And we have to deal with that by really listening to our teachers, listening to actually what's happening in our classrooms, and have them come up with the solutions. What is it that they need? What training do they need? What support systems that they need? And I would include those exact solutions into the BEP.
I really appreciate this question and some of the responses in regard to trauma-informed practices, because that's something that I've been advocating for years on the Board of Education in my work for support with kids with mental health needs. Specific things that I would change in the behavior education plan is I really would like to shift the discussion away from documenting behavioral events in our schools and really looking at what education is going on in our schools to help our students learn the behaviors that we're looking for. We really need to, what I hear from educators is that they don't have time to do what's being asked of them, to do the interventions. They don't have the training they need to work with some of our students that really have significant mental health needs and educational needs. And so again, we need to be listening to our educators and making sure that the supports are there to make the behavior education plan successful. I truly believe it's the right direction. I don't think it's been implemented well, but I think if we keep our focus on it, we can make those improvements.
Gloria, why don't you start in 1 minute? Just some thoughts on this. How can we even arrive at effective interventions if we have 2 social workers for more than 2,000 students in our high schools?
We can't.
What can be done?
We can't. So, I mean, I think we have to really look at, if we're really serious about dealing with the behavior issues and those underlying issues, we have to put our money in it. We have to make it a priority. Our community is invested in this, right? I hear from parents, I hear from businesses, what is it that we can do? We need to bring them being part of this discussion and be a part of the intervention strategies. How are they going to support these interventions and support social workers? You know, for me personally, my social worker was great when I was in high school. Really changed my trajectory. So they play a critical role. Our staff, right? Our security staff, they play a critical role. Our minority student counselors, critical. We need to support that. If we value that and that is what we need to change what's happening in our schools, then we need to invest in that.
Mary?
I think we need to look much broader than just the number of social workers when we talk about our high schools. We have to look at all of the ways that we can engage students in their learning. We have a lot of students who unfortunately come to school and don't feel like they belong, like they're valued, like they're appreciated. We have too many students who are arriving in high school 2, 3, 4, 5 grades behind. And of course they're disengaged. So this is not going to be solved by adding a social worker or 2. We have to understand how we really address the issues and make sure that we have a comprehensive plan that looks at all the different ways, but at the heart of it has to be how we create a sense of belonging and trust and engagement with each one of our students.
You're all doing so well with this.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Mary has shared. I do think what is critical is making sure that our students feel valued and included in their schools. That is critical. I also believe that this is a very complex situation that does require us really looking deeply at the underlying causes of why students may be displaying certain behavior, and it could be a wide range of unmet needs. So the one thing I would say that we haven't done and that I will do and I have done is continue to make our students that have historically been marginalized in our community and have not been served well in our schools a priority. It needs to be a priority, and we need to put our dollars behind our words.
Okay. All of you, 2 minutes each, and Anna, you'll be answering first. On the Board of Education page of the district's website, it lists the Board of Education's duties. One duty listed reads as follows: representing constituents, soliciting input on key decisions, and listening to concerns and needs of the community. So how do you find out what the community needs and concerns are, and how do you solicit input on issues before the Board of Education? 2 minutes.
Thank you. I have to say, I'm like a visual learner, so this like auditory stuff is a little bit hard for me. So I apologize if I have to ask what the question is, because
That's okay.
I lose track. So I think what I heard you say is, how do I gather input from community members?
How do you find out what the community needs and concerns are, and how do you solicit input on issues before the board?
Well, you know, I do this a lot in my work as a parent peer specialist. I work with many families throughout the district, and so I spend a lot of time talking with them and actually seeing their lived experience in our schools. And that includes a lot of the challenges that they face in our schools. I'm privileged as a board member to have part of my job to be going out and meeting with constituents. So I have a lot of coffee dates with people and try and sit down and find out what they want for our school district. I feel like I'm a pretty good listener, and I enjoy talking to people, so that's another thing that I do. I think I also, having 3 children in the schools, I talk with a lot of the families that have their children attending our public schools, and I think that's a great way to find out what the needs are. And then I also think being a parent peer specialist for children and youth with mental health needs has made it much easier to sit down and talk with our students and hear their perspective and let them share what their desire is for their education. And I think that's been really impactful for me, because I think when I came on to the board, I might have had different ideas, but after working with our students and hearing more from them, I think my perspective has changed.
Let's go to Mary. Sorry.
I feel very grateful, because a lot of work that I do every single day in my life is being part of the community. And so whether it is with regards to the Avid Tops program, a program that I co-founded 8 years ago, with Kate Bryan, who's here tonight, at East High School. And now we reach over 1,500 students between high school and those that are in college. Or whether it is with regards to just the emails that people send us. I make it a priority to always ask people, whenever I meet someone who says that they have a child, I say, where do they go to school? How are they doing? What is your feedback? And sometimes that is the most accurate than just necessarily hearing when there are problems. Because we do hear, as board members, we get a lot of input, and that's incredibly valuable input. But I think the most important thing for a board member is to be curious, to be asking questions, to ask people when they see them. So that's really my main way. In addition, as a board member, we're assigned every year 8 schools, it rotates, and part of our constituencies are the people who are in our schools, our teachers. And as I rotate and visit schools, I ask the principal to make sure that I have time at the beginning of that day when teachers can just drop by without any organized agenda to just share their thoughts and make sure that the board understands what they're thinking. So whether it's parents, whether it's our staff, whether it's students, a meeting with the Student Senate, or whether it is just being involved in the programs in our community, I feel I really have a good amount of input. And if I don't, I reach out and I ask people.
So, you know, I love this question, because I had a mentor who told me that if I stopped receiving the phone calls, if there was not a line of people waiting outside my office door, then I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And that is so true. And as a law enforcement officer, it is something I had to do all the time, right? It was part of my work. And, you know, it reminds me of a time when we were trying to get the youth voice in getting, it was called Youth in Action. We implemented it at Wright Middle School and at West High School. And it was really to try to gauge their safety concerns. And we went out to both Wright Middle School after-school programs for a year, West High School, and we got input. What we learned from that was just so powerful that we continued to work on. It was safety on our buses and safety at our transfer points. And we implemented policies and procedures from that. What I do a lot is when I'm in the mayor's office, when we're talking about policy decisions, I look around the table and I say, who's missing? Whose voice is missing? That is who I need to talk to. And that's why I really like the racial equity analysis tool that we use consistently within the city, is that it really does force you to ask that question, right? Are we missing voices at the table? And so I'm so infused in our community. I grew up here. I have so many connections from our Latino community. When we're talking about our DACA and what's happening in our legislation, how that impacts our DACA students, what's happening in our African American students, they call me. They called me in my role as a law enforcement officer. They call me now as deputy mayor. And that is something that I will bring to the school board. We are missing that piece. That is a strong component that I bring. I feel strongly on that. I will not be doing my job if I don't have if I'm not infused in grassroots and understanding the challenges in our community.
This question is from the audience, and you each get 2 minutes, and Gloria, you'll be first. The PALS kindergarten literacy benchmark is going down while graduation rates are up. Seems counterintuitive. What's going on? Could this be simply a failure to fail?
That's a great question. I guess what I would do, right? I mean, I think is knowing, right, being part of the board, I wouldn't know all the specifics. I don't know the reason why. But as I said before, I would take it through a performance excellence process that we use in city government consistently and assess what's happening, right? And by assessing what's happening, we talk to everybody, and we look at the data. We look at what's happening, and we make decisions based on that. So I wouldn't make assumptions on what's happening because I wouldn't know, but I would definitely reach out to our community stakeholders, reach out to the experts in the field, figuring out what's happening, and reassess and figure out where we need to change things as part of the program.
Thank you. Mary?
I think when looking at data, we have to be more specific about which metrics. So even with PALS, we've actually made tremendous progress in the areas that we have been coming up short. As I mentioned in the opening, we have seen the percentage of African American students who are proficient in reading double within that time. So I think whether this was PALS overall, whether it's PALS for a specific area, and what we have seen is our African American graduation rates increase quite substantially over the last few years. And so it is important to delve into the data to make sure that we are focused on those pieces that we think best represent where we need to focus and how we would define success. It is so easy to pick numbers out that will justify whatever scenario or you want to, or whatever picture you want to support. So as a board, it's really important that we use data wisely to help inform and enlighten our practices and our options, but we can't be stuck on one particular number. These are children. It is their lives, and there is no way that one metric or one test score really indicates their future and their potential and how they're doing.
Thank you.
I agree that we do have to use our data wisely. I have seen as a board member where we have used standardized tests and other metrics to gauge outcomes and progress and sometimes make decisions when those tests and evaluations weren't intended for that use. So we have to be careful about what we're using the data for, and if that's really what that was set to be used for. I do want to comment about the failure to fail. I work with kids that really tend to be some of the most marginalized students in our school district. And I can personally say that I have seen students graduate from our high school completely unprepared for post-secondary education, employment, or community readiness. And I have seen it, it happens, and I think it's a tragedy because we know what happens to our students that don't have the skills to go out into the community beyond their high school education. In regards to the PALs and the grad rates, I couldn't really speculate. I know we're discussing moving away from PALs. But I do think we need to have a conversation as well about how we're measuring progress and what are we setting for goals for our school district, for our students. I don't want us to be solely focusing on standardized test scores, behavior referrals. I think we need to have a broader look, and I think we're getting to that with the rewrite of the strategic framework and looking at the metrics. But I agree with Mary, we really need to be finding ways that address the whole child and doesn't just take one piece but leave out the other parts of our students.
So the next question is for Anna, and you'll have 2 minutes, and Gloria and Mary will each have 1 minute to respond. So there has been a great deal of discussion in our community on the role of educational resource officers, or EROs, in our schools. The Madison School Board formed an ad hoc committee to study our ERO program and present a summary of their findings and recommendations to the board. And this report is due, I believe, in late spring or early summer.
May 2018.
We acknowledge that the information from the committee may shape your thoughts and ultimately your vote on the matter. But please share your specific thoughts at this time as to how the district should use police officers in our high schools.
First, what I want to start with is that I need to say that I do believe we need to change how we are using police in our schools. I know many of the EROs, and being part of the ERO ad hoc, I've been able to go into all of our high schools and meet with all our EROs, and I just want to say these are tremendous people, and they are doing wonderful work with a lot of our students. The question we need to ask ourselves is, are these the folks that are most qualified to be doing some of the work that they're doing? In talking with EROs, many of them said about 80% of their day is spent doing social work with students. And so the question is, if that's what they're spending their time doing, why are we not hiring social workers to do that work rather than an educational resource officer? I know this has been a contentious issue, and I'm glad the Board of Education Administration and the city didn't shy away from this conversation because it's critical. It's critical. When the contract came back to the board, I felt like we needed to take the opportunity to make some changes. We couldn't keep doing the status quo of having really important decisions being made behind closed doors. And that's why the Board of Education did decide to move forward and create the ad hoc committee to increase transparency and engage the people most impacted by educational resource officers and bringing them into the conversation. And I am very proud of that work, and I am very proud of my colleagues on the committee. And so at the end of the day, when the recommendations can come out, all I can say is I'll support our committee, but the status quo is unacceptable.
Gloria.
Sure, so, So I do support officers in our schools. I think we have to change the way we use them. And I think that it was a role that we all played. We all see it was happening. And actually it came to the point that the officers saw it was happening, that we had to do something about it. And Officer Rossetti out of La Follette High School, who was an ERO, established the first restorative justice process within our schools. And I worked hand in hand with him. I actually started the first one of the first community restorative justice courts, youth courts on the south side as a community court. So EROs do play a critical role. I just spoke with some Memorial High School students yesterday who were talking about bullying. I mean, these are real issues, right? This is stuff that's happening in our classrooms. We are not ready to take officers out of our schools. And I think that we could look to phasing them out at some point, but right now, if we're not dealing with the underlying issues that our children are faced with day in and day out, and our teachers and our students are having to deal with, we need officers, we need protection, we need to ensure that they are there to keep our children and our students safe. I believe in restorative justice practices. I know how to do it. I know how to implement those policies. I believe they bring some value into our schools.
I'm really proud of the work that we did on the board because for the first time in decades, the board even took up this issue. Prior to this board, we pretty much rubber stamped a contract every 3 years and no one asked a thing about it. So this is the first time we asked, we pushed back, we said that we in the schools set the rules on how EROs are going to operate, certainly within still their job description. So I think we have made tremendous progress just from the way that things had been done over the last decades. But it's not good enough. I do support EROs in the school. I think, unfortunately, we have the accessibility to firearms in our society necessitates that we do have trained personnel in the schools who are making sure that our students are safe. But we have to understand how they spend their time every single day that is supporting students and not only their safety, but in the education and learning as well.
Now it's time for another audience question, and Mary, you'll answer first. And I'm changing the time frame. You have 30 seconds. I think you can do it. The question is, wait a minute, we'll get the timers ready. Sorry. Will you walk with the students tomorrow?
Yes, I have it on my calendar. I am not walking with the students, but I am walking out and taking the 17 minutes, and that to me is incredibly important. In fact, when I first heard about the event weeks ago when it was announced, there was another event on my calendar and I canceled it and put that on.
Yes, I am walking with our students, actually meeting them at East High School. I am one of the volunteers through the United Way Law Enforcement Collaboration. So a lot of us, our leaders of color, will be out there representing and ensuring the safety of our children, and that we're taking a backdrop. This is their movement and we're supporting their movement.
Yes, I'll also be joining our students tomorrow, so we might have to do a quorum check or something. I am just so proud of the students in our school district for coming together, organizing this, and really taking a leadership role in this discussion.
Okay, 2 minutes and 1 minute for Mary and Anna. The Madison School District is losing teachers and principals, other staff to early retirement or jobs in other districts. Why do you think this is happening? What are some things you would do to promote staff retention in the MMSD?
I think we have to ensure that we are, that they feel valued as part of the school district, our teachers. And when I say value, that their voices are being heard in the decisions that are being made. All across the board, right? Within their administration, within their schools, and the decisions that get made by the principals, and way on up to the school district. We have to ensure that they feel valued. We have to have a voice on the school board that can vote without conflict of interest on their wages. That is so important. As we are talking about wages, that is critical. We need to ensure that we promote and support our teachers. And the vote is what counts, and we need that. I bring that. I think we have to provide an inclusive environment to keep our teachers with MMSD, and also keep them with the city, right? I mean, I think we have to provide an environment that's inclusive within the city as well. But I think inclusivity, in ensuring that we are hearing their voice, ensuring that on the school board that we have people on the board that can vote on their interests, that is critical. So those are the three things I would do.
Thank you. We'll go to Anna.
So first, I think that it's critical that we continue to support our educators by making sure that they have quality pay and benefits. Just last year, I fought for a living wage, $15 an hour for our special education assistants. And I thought that was great that we moved forward on that, and it's critical that we continue to make sure that our educators are well compensated and cared for. I also believe, though, we need to make sure that our educators are involved in decision-making in a meaningful way, where their expertise and experience is valued. And last, I would say, we really need to allow our educators to have more freedom around creativity and what they're doing in their classrooms. I'm a former educator. The best thing about my job was being able to walk into the classroom, design lessons based on the unique students that I was serving on, and I feel like we've moved too far away from that.
Mary.
I agree with both Gloria and Anna, and am very proud to have been a board member that voted to increase the minimum wage we pay in the schools to $15 an hour. We also have to make sure, in addition to supporting our staff and the schools every single day, that they feel valued, that they have the supports, that they have the freedom to be creative, that they see a pathway on how to continually improve in their work and their profession. Is important. We also have to make sure that we are competitive with other districts when it comes to pay and to benefits. And what we have seen recently is where our highest turnover is with our cross-categorical teachers and our bilingual teachers. And so there is a proposal among the board to increase that pay in order to be competitive. And we have to make sure that we are the district of choice, not only with regards to competitive pay and benefits, but also the quality of the work environment.
Statements, and each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and Gloria is going to start us off.
Sure, thank you. So, as I've shared with you, I am a product of our public schools. I am a woman of color who lived through the challenges of poverty, and those are who had behavior issues, and those are the very students that we're struggling with today. And not only that, but I have been able to transcend those experiences into my professional career. I have 12 years of law enforcement serving this city, protecting and serving the City of Madison residents, and continue to invest in public service in my deputy mayor role. This is exactly the individual that you want, that you say you value and that you want to invest in. You invested in me, and I have continued to give back to this community. So I am asking you to vote for me on April 3rd because you invested in me. I am the product of what you did. So let's continue, let's show Madison that we are really true about racial equity and social justice and promote and elect the first Latina to the school board.
And again, if we can just hold our applause till everyone's done. Anna.
Well, I want to start by saying thank you all again for being here tonight and being part of, I guess, us talking, but I'll just call it a conversation, as well as your commitment to the students in our school district, as well as our families and our educators. It has been a tremendous honor, as well as a challenge, to serve on the Board of Education. When I came onto the board in 2015, I knew that both our city and our school district had significant issues around equity. I can definitively say that we do not serve all residents or all students equally well. I've seen that in my own experiences. I've sat in on meetings and had staff try to keep my kid out of school because of how he is different from other students. I sat alongside other families and see that happen to their children. And that's why I decided to run for the Board of Education. In the past 3 years, I have fought for and will continue to fight for high-quality, inclusive public schools. We must ensure that every student has access to an excellent education regardless of personal circumstance. I have worked on crafting budget amendments to secure funding for additional mental health supports. I have secured funding to expand professional development to help our educators work with kids that have reading challenges. I have worked to secure funding for programs that wrap around our students of color so that they have a strong system of support like their white middle-class peers. I want to continue to do this work. I have dedicated my entire life, well not my entire life, but over 20 years, which is quite a bit of it, to public education because I believe it's the most important thing we can do to ensure that we have a just society and a strong future, and our kids depend on it.
Thank you. Mary.
I look forward to serving 3 more years on the board because I do believe these next 3 years are critically important to making sure that we have taken the foundational work that we have accomplished in these 5 years, but that we accelerate that growth. And having the perspective of being a past board member, having an educational background with the AvidTops program that I co-founded, having a business background that helps to understand the financial issues, the sustainability issues, the government experience that I've had, the nonprofit, and how we partner with other organizations, because we're not going to do this all alone. And also the ties that I have to the community. That's what makes me a qualified and good board member. I struggle to make sure that we do have voices at the table. And I look forward to serving these 3 years, but I also hope that in the 3 years from now, that there are people, more candidates of color, that are stepping up to either challenge me or to take this seat. So I look forward to serving the next 3 years. I look forward to us making substantial progress in meeting the needs and changing the status quo and making sure that the future for our students, particularly our students of color, is much, much brighter.
Thank you. Now you can clap for the couple of quick thank yous in closing. We'd first like to thank the Christ Presbyterian Church. They are so wonderful to work with, and we're so delighted that they have this community space that they share with many different organizations. We want to thank Evan Halpop. He was videotaping this. This will be available on YouTube. Once we have the link, we'll send it out to the candidates, and we'll send it everywhere, so you will be able to share it with all of your friends. I want to thank all of you for your questions and for spending 90 minutes listening to this very important forum. And our ask of you is that on April 3rd, you get out there and vote and bring 3, 4, 10, 20 friends with you, because it's an important election. Again, we thank GRUMPS for hosting this forum and for developing the questions. And then finally, I'd like to thank the candidates. Being on the school board is not an easy thing to do. It takes a heck of a lot of time. They're not in it for the big bucks, and they're not in it for all of the accolades, but they're in it to make a difference. They're in it to make a difference to our community and to our students. So thank the 3 of you for what you're doing. And with that, meeting adjourned.